The Smite Update is proudly sponsored by SmiteTube.com, a new up-and-coming Smite community website dedicated to weekly Smite tournaments, articles, and excellent Smite content videos. Show your support and check out SmiteTube.com. Also, please check out the Smite Update's second sponsor, Tweaked Audio. Go to tweakedaudio.com for high-performance, noise-reducing earbuds. Use the code OctanePro to get 33% off plus free shipping anywhere in the world. Check out tweakedaudio.com today. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the Smite Update. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 21 of the Smite Update. Tonight we're going to have a special episode, which is actually going to be a Smite roundtable discussion. Joining me as always is our show host, Wristy. Wristy, how's it going?
Not bad, not bad. Now we have so many faces, I'm not going to know what to do.
That's really right. That's right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our guest. Starting out, we do have Coop, which is the Director of Operations for SmiteTube.com. How's it going, Coop?
Pretty good, pretty good. How's it going for you?
It's going well. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Furthermore, we have Gavin, the Associate Content Provider for Hi-Rez Studios. Gavin, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Furthermore, we have Duke, the community management and social media coordinator for Hi-Rez Studios. Duke, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And we also have on PonPon, the competitive player for Denial NA. PonPon, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. We also have Crete, the competitive player from Silver Snakes. Crete, welcome to the show.
It's Crete and Hein.
Crete, thank you.
Yeah,
and
no problem,
breaking the ice there, finally, we do have Demon Machine, the jack of all trades. Thank you for joining us, sir.
No problem, sir.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to have Wristy go over kind of the roundtable discussion format for tonight, and then we'll jump into the questions.
So what we're going to do, we're just going to go through, get some of the questions, go through them, and then just kind of direct them kind of at the people that it's mainly for, and then everybody else can kind of jump in after that. So once we get the initial question out of the way, everyone kind of jumps in, and let's have fun there.
All right. So let's go ahead and jump in with the recent Smite announcements category. We're going to go ahead, and the first question is, at Gamescom, Hi-Rez Studios announced the partnership with Tencent Publishing Company. What does this exactly mean for Smite, the community, and the game content? I'm going to go ahead and throw this over to Gavin to start, and then we can go around the table.
I mean, it's exciting. It's I mean, especially for everyone here in the studio, as well as the fans. I mean, anyone who's done the research on Tencent knows enough about the company and what they've done. It's just exciting to see that come our way, and now, possibly bringing Smite to a bigger audience. It's exciting stuff.
Duke, do you have anything else to comment on that?
Not really. I mean, well, I guess I can expand on it a little bit. Demon's used to that. Yeah, like Gavin said, anyone who knows who Tencent is will understand that it's a pretty darn big deal. And they've taken pretty much any game they've ever touched to a huge audience and to rather huge success, just depending on what genre it's in. So they know how to publish games and market games in their area of responsibility, I guess you could say, and they always do a really good job with it. So it's definitely good for Smite.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I'll open this up to everybody at the table. Any comments on Tencent? I know some people are nervous about it. Some people are super happy about it. Just throw it out there. Any thoughts around the table?
Well, I'm super excited about Tencent. I heard about it a while back, and so I've known for a little bit, but it's just like a really interesting move, and I think it's going to be overall really, really good. You have a huge publishing company that's going to bring a lot of players to the game, which just means more money for Hi-Rez to pump out more content, and I think it's just a really, really good move, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
One thing I was wondering as well, kind of, I don't know if they can say anything, that when Tencent went into League of Legends, they did inject like 400 million into Riot for it. And I wondered, did they inject like was it just a standard partnership between Tencent and Hi-Rez, or did they inject some money in there to give Hi-Rez a bit of a boost and then going to do control over that? Well, you've got to ask, haven't you?
Yeah, we don't really have that answer. Like
Okay.
Gavin and I, even if Gavin and I could did know, we probably couldn't tell you.
No,
but we
yeah.
don't even know.
Yeah, that's
so
we
there's
can't tell
that.
you. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
fine.
a no comment.
But
man.
again-
No, that's fine.
We don't even know. So for what that's worth.
Good to know. Good to know. Any last comments before we jump on to the next question? I know this one's kind of straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say it's for people that don't know Tencent. I mean, yeah, you can do the research on them. When you look at their current track record with League of Legends, when you have to go back to that game solely, and Riot and League of Legends was a fairly small company at the time. They introduced this new game mode, the MOBA. I mean, I know it stemmed from Dota, but they really flourished it and brought it into the competitive scene, and they were still kind of trugging along. They were trying to get their funds together, kind of like how, Hi-Rez, I'm not saying they didn't have their funds together, but it was still trying to grow itself by itself. And then when they partnered with Tencent a couple years ago, back in 2009 I believe it was, they blew up immediately. And I kind of guessed that it would be a publishing company. I didn't know it would be in Asia, but it just seemed fitting when the announcement was said that there was going to be an announcement at Gamescom. When I heard it was Tencent, I mean, I got hugely excited. I mean, it's so big for this game. When you just, all companies aside, when you just look at the history and exactly what this company, Tencent, has done for other games, if they can replicate that with Smite, Smite's going to blow up huge.
Yeah.
So here's the question I kind of have for Duke. Is this the same kind of deal? I thought Riot got bought out by Tencent when they had their deal, or am I incorrect in that one? I thought that's what I read about
It's worded
that.
funny, isn't it?
Oh well, I should.
Like, how is this working? Like, are you guys helping them? Are they helping you? Are you guys just kind of like, well, we're going to release it in Asia, and you guys are going to take care of
publishing
Asia
rights.
only?
They have publishing rights in Asia and some other countries. Is how it's going to work.
Yeah. It's a strategic partnership.
Yeah. If you go to Facebook, I made a post today on the Smite Game Facebook that actually is it's a video from Curse, or Jess from Curse sat down with Todd at Gamescom and got a few more details out of him. Kind of answered that question.
Okay.
But basically, yeah, it is a partnership, and basically they've purchased publishing rights for Smite outside of the U.S. and or outside of North America and Europe is how it is how
That's
it's
the rest of the world.
That's just ridiculously huge. The fact that a company that big is like, look at this game, we like it enough that we want to buy the publishing rights for it. I mean, that's like, this is going to get huge. That's all.
Yeah, and Octane dropped a link there in chat. That's the video to get a few more details. It's like a 5-minute video. So
Yeah, it was actually a really good video. It was like 5 minutes long, and it answered everything I wanted to know pretty much that I knew that you guys could release legally. So I would definitely recommend it to the audience to check it out, as it does give a lot more information.
But it's going to be great as well to get the Asian market in, because there's so many of them. There is a lot of Asians. If you can get a small percentage, there's quite a bit. Especially like the level of play is going to be quite good as well. But from what I could see from some of like the research that I was doing, that they hold 80% of the MOBA market, or just about. It was like 79 points something or other. But that, if they hold like that amount, imagine how big the influx of Smite's going to be once it kicks in. And we also saw like the art direction. It was funny because I was like, well, what's going on with this? But you can kind of see the coincidence now that they're trying to help out the Asian market to actually just kind of, what they're saying, like more authentic and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just kind of,
yeah, it's very, very, very intentional, shift there, and they gave us a lot of feedback. They've been giving us feedback for like a year.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's been a while then you've been talking to them.
Yeah.
This isn't
Todd
new actually. I can say that because I said it in the video.
Looking back, you can definitely see the influence. Like if you go look over the last year, it's like, okay, what's happened in Smite? Everything. So
Yeah.
very good point. Very good point. Let's go ahead and keep moving along here. Next question would be, with the announcement of the Tencent partnership, we also saw the introduction of the Smite into the Asian market. How do you feel this will affect the overall Smite competitive scene? And we'll go ahead and toss this to PonPon to go ahead and start us off.
I think to start out with, it's not going to make that much of a difference. It's going to take a lot of time for people to really get into it, really start hashing out the game. But from that, you get a whole bunch of people who have never touched the game, have no previous conceptions as to what the meta is, what roles are. And so you might see gods picked up in a different way. And so it's very possible if there were to be a meta established, which I right now think the NA and EU metas are relatively similar enough to almost call them the same. There's a few things that people do differently. If there's going to be a change in meta, it will be as people from the Asian community pick up the game and really hash out what gods' roles are, what comps work together. And so it could be very interesting just to see what they do with it. I just don't think it'll come for a while, because they'll have to actually go through that whole process.
Sure. Any other comments there regarding the competitive scene? With all of a sudden now we have an Asian market. Korea is definitely a big focus there. I know, just with other MOBAs as well and other RTS games too.
Well,
I think
as
from
I
think from the competitive scene specifically, in terms of like tournaments, you're going to see probably a lot more money pumped into tournaments. There's going to be a bigger market for the tournaments. And so I wouldn't expect to see more tournaments. I would expect to see higher quality tournaments where instead of having like maybe 3 top teams that compete for an area, you might see 8 or 9 suddenly now. And so it'll be good for both meta development, for the growth of the competitive scene. Tournaments will get bigger, prize pools will get bigger. I think it'll get way more hyped. And I think that's overall just a good thing for the competitive scene all around.
Wristy?
I was going to say, like PonPon says, that when they start like learning their meta as well, that with a lot of the other games as well that the Chinese and the Asian market kind of get into, when they learn stuff, they also like hash everything out, like Theorycraft, the whole lot. But their like view on it slightly different to like the North American and the EU market, and then they come up with some really strange ideas. You can kind of see it with like Dota, that the Chinese meta is kind of slightly weird. They'll pull up some gods and it's like, why have they done that? But for some reason it worked really well. So when we get them into Smite, you could see some, like you said, like, it's not going to be for a while because their influence isn't going to get over to the North American or the EU side for a long time until we start seeing some like cross tournaments and stuff going out. But we might actually start to see some weird tactics coming out as they start trying to get through and try and push the classes to their limits and see what they can do.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it really opens up for now national tournaments. I mean, international tournaments. You figure once the Asian market really starts to cultivate and get really, really good, like Pon said, it's going to take a while. But once you start having those top 3 teams in the Asian market, they're going to want to start getting more competition. And what do they want to do? They want to be the best. They want to be the best in the world. So there's got to be a way for them to start competing against these EU teams, the NA teams, and that's only going to have to be on Hi-Rez, which that may be long down the road, obviously, to kind of do with a world championships type deal. But certainly it wouldn't be so far-fetched to think of an EU/Asian tournament somewhere in that European setting. So that opens the floor for that as well.
Just wait till we get to the point where there'll be the Asians competing in the EU tournaments. We'll get the Korean players and stuff like that, just kind of mixing in with the NA and stuff like that. That'd be quite good to actually see. And you could possibly see, depending on how big the esports get, the team houses start to come out and stuff like that, where they go around the world and kind of set up in North America, go up against the NA teams there in their own turf, and just kind of maybe like see how StarCraft 2's kind of come out and just kind of see it explode that way. That'd be an interesting way to see it go.
Yeah, I mean, something to keep note of is that in the Asian market, you will see players that are very mathematical with their gameplay. I know, like PonPon yourself, you break down things a lot, all the way down. And there's a few people here and there in the scene that make those posts on Reddit that are breaking down the math. People over there do that night and day because you have to keep in mind, and definitely for the viewers, that overseas gaming is what national sports are to us in North America. Same thing with like soccer over in EU. I mean, it holds that super high level that, these players, competitive players, are known in the country very, very well. They become very wealthy actually because of the products that start to grow around them, along with the scene that grows around them and the different teams. So I think it'll be interesting because even in North America with games like League of Legends and StarCraft 2, it hasn't even breached that level that we see over in the Asian market. So even though the North America and EU has an advantage and a jump start of over a year now with Smite, I feel like the Asian market might catch up on us a lot faster than what we think. Well,
as soon as we've kind of like established it, they can look over and see what's kind of going on. They've got some kind of like reference points to look at, and they rather than just making it up themselves, kind of like what we've had to do, and go with it. Now they've got the reference points. They're going to see what's going on. And they're going to go, yeah. So it's definitely a good starting point for them.
Any last comments before we move on to the current competitive
Well,
scene?
something to add on to that is you mentioned that the Asian scene, would have to grow in comparison to this scene, but you also have to remember that like we haven't been building the same meta. We haven't been building the same skills for a solid year. Like things have changed a lot. So, I'd wager to say that the meta hasn't really been constant. Like you can't. There was a point at which there was a substantial change, at least with the map change, and then since that point, I'd say there was probably another one, but I can't put my finger on when. So, I think there is a very good chance for players of a high skill level to just jump in on equivalent basis, at least as long as the game stays in beta.
Yep, that's a good point. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump over, unless anyone else has any other comments, jump over to the current competitive scene, and Wristy, go ahead and take it away.
So, what's a few things that Smite Esports can learn from like MOBA giants like Dota and League of Legends? So, like, you can look at the Dota 2 International and the League of Legends World Championship. Let's just actually, I'm going to throw this one to Coop and see if he can kind of think something.
Well, I mean, when you talk about esports, it's not just the competitive players. It's making that game look as much of a sport as you can electronically. So obviously, you have the production value that they can learn. Hi-Rez and the Smite players alone can learn from the Dota 2 and the League of Legends World Championships how to basically put on a good show, how to present yourself at an event, and how to do all these things that really make the game look good. So they can definitely learn that side of things from these streams and the actual live events. As far as the players go, I mean, like we just talked about, it's really that the other metas, the players, what they're going to come up with and think of. It's not just Asia. Obviously, these other countries and other nationalities are going to get into the game as well. Now that Asia's getting in, and then you have the Europe and North American, so they're going to develop their own metas as well. And the players in North America and Europe will soon learn from that if it's a valuable or a viable strategy. So that's really what Smite can take away from those other games. And of course, as those other players from the other games come in, if we get top players from League of Legends switching over to Smite, they're going to bring their knowledge from League of Legends into Smite, which is also going to create new metas and new strategies.
Anybody else? Any thoughts on? I mean, we had Dota 2 International this past, a few weeks ago, and production quality, as Coop had said, was astronomical. But
did you see their production truck that they had? The big Arctic lorry full of gear. That was amazing. What I would like to see, because what I kind of was watching over at Gamescom, and just kind of my little critique about it was, I'd like to see a dedicated observer. Now we've got a three-dimensional camera that if you've got like a proper someone that's artistic a bit with it, you can do so many great things with it. But trying to cast as well as trying to do that, you could see Bart kind of struggle a little bit. Sometimes you'd see the camera wouldn't move, or when he was explaining something, he'd miss something as well. So I'd like to see a dedicated observer, just so their whole job was what's going on around the map. It then leaves some of the strain from the casters there. They can do whatever they want. They don't need to worry about where their camera's pointing, and they can just cast. Because sometimes I'll cast and I won't even move the camera because it's just I can see everything I need to do. But yeah, I'd like to see that. That's about probably my main critique that I saw from Gamescom anyway.
Let's go ahead and throw it over to our high-res staff that we do have here. From your perspective, you guys saw two very successful events. What for you guys just looking at it? I know you guys probably discussed it internally, but what have you guys noticed that stuck out that you guys feel you guys can learn from it?
Well, I mean, we're trying to improve our tournaments every single every tournament we try to improve. I guess every tournament series. I can't say you're going to see huge improvement between Gamescom and the NA one coming up this weekend, but we're always trying. I'm in charge of the assets most of the time, and I get more and more time ahead to get those ready. And the more time I have, and the more people I get to work with, like I had the wonderful opportunity of working with the ESL guys for all the assets that you guys saw for the Gamescom tournament. And I think together we made some really, really cool stuff, much better than anything. The production value was significantly higher than anything we've put together. But I definitely agree. The cameraman thing is a must.
Yeah.
We all discuss it in studio, like while we were watching it. It's a big joke at the studio. Bart's cameraman work.
He loves follow camera quite a lot.
Yeah, Erez hates him on camera. So I imagine you'll probably see something like that in the future.
Sweet.
Brilliant.
Duke, what are your thoughts there as well about the two events and what we can learn and just from other MOBA giants out there?
Yeah, I mean the two things to me that stand out the most with all the big events that are thrown with the other MOBAs, you know, the international and LCS and everything like that, is that obviously Wristy hit the nail on the head. That's a huge one, is having a dedicated camera person or persons that, you know, you can kind of switch between two different people doing things, so you can set things up like a live production type environment, you know, like a live TV show or a live sportscast, where you have you know, two different cameras going at one time, and they're not the people calling the action. The people calling the action are, you know, just getting to see the different feeds and see which one's live at any given time, so on and so forth. Obviously, we need that. That increases production value by leaps and bounds.
A lot.
The other thing, it's sort of a production value thing, but it's also it's also just good for the competitive players. The other thing that I would like to see us do, I don't know how soon this is happening, and I haven't been in discussions on this at all, but is the soundproof booths.
Oh, sure.
For each of the teams, because I mean, it's cool for people to just be encapsulated in, this is what my team is doing. So like I said, I haven't been in any of those discussions, but that's one of the things that jumps out at me with the other events, is that's just a really cool, hey, this is our team in this box and we're going to fight our way out of it. And, you know, in my weird twisted mind. So
yeah, well, if you look at Gamescom this past weekend, we did actually see that starting to get applied. Not necessarily a booth, but I believe from what I saw, they actually had like the ear cups or whatever. What is the exact name for those?
Earmuffs.
I guess it'd be earmuffs.
Noise cancellation.
Exactly.
The things that airplane people, you work like working at an airport or in loud environments, that they protect your ears. So they had that with earbuds under them, so it basically all but negated the sound from outside.
Correct. And I think the booth adds a different atmosphere as well. I mean, every time you see those booths, it kind of, as a viewer, it's like a desire. It'd be awesome to be there, to be in that environment, and it puts them, you know, in a pedestal per se. You know, making them look glorified inside those booths. So I completely agree there. Looking outside of the production value, as I know production's huge, and you know that'll come in time with money and learning. What are your thoughts on the formats that we saw? For example, Dota 2 is like a Super Bowl type of content format with the tournament layout. Is that something we can learn with Smite and apply to Smite compared to having all these mini tournaments? If you guys have a comment on the production or even on that, go ahead, please voice it.
I mean, I think that just comes down to the size of the tournaments and how many teams are invited. And I actually really like what Gamescom did with the group stage into the grand finals and the third place match. I thought that was great. But when you get past 4 teams and you get to 8 or 16, it just becomes easier to have a tournament that allows teams to really play more and have a wider variety of opponents. So you don't just end up like to go back a few months, Curse versus Root, Curse versus Root, Curse versus Root, Curse versus Root, and you get other matches. And part of it is just having teams that give even matches from first place to 8th place in terms of rankings. So
the one thing I was thinking about the round robin is how they kind of decided the tiebreaker. Now I know what they did. They kind of went down to how long the games were played. So Cognitive won that and got the first place on there, and then they kind of went to SK and Bipolar, and then decided to pick like SK over Bipolar because they already won the game between them beforehand. Now I'm kind of iffy on the decision because I thought, right, Bipolar, the way it kind of felt when Bipolar was playing the last game against Vengeance, it's like if they can hammer this out quickly, they should be able to get second place over SK. But what turned out is they just, because it wasn't all 3 teams were done in how quick the completion was, SK then got second place over Bipolar that got put down to the bracket. So I was a bit kind of curious on that, how you kind of decided that one.
Yeah. Outside of that, any last thoughts that we have regarding pretty much what we can learn from other MOBA giants at this point from competitive side. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have something to bring up. Dota 2 and League of Legends, the competitive teams that are there are very, very much supported, not just by like finances or anything, but they have staff dedicated to them. They'll have people that will sit there and hammer out strategy, hammer out tactics, go over replays, and the mindset of it being a professional job versus I'm doing this on the weekends because I find this fun and it might turn into something.
Yeah.
There's a lot more time dedicated into it, and so there's a higher caliber of competition. I guarantee if you took the top 4 NA teams and EU teams and just gave them salaries and said, this is your job now for a year, have fun, the level of play would increase exponentially, and that's something that like Dota 2 and League of Legends has now. That's something that Smite just doesn't have right now, and hopefully eventually will. But like that's a huge difference, and I think going into like as it transitions from being a fun thing to do on the weekends versus Oh, that's weird. Sorry, I have another thing going on. As a transition.
Oh, he needs to learn to mute his mic. Yeah.
I was so confused. As it transitions from like a side weekend thing to a job, I think looking at League of Legends and looking at Dota 2 and how they did that, the team that like does it the best will take a very early lead. And I think that's something that a lot of teams like need to go look and see how League of Legends team organize themselves and how Dota 2 teams organize themselves.
Sorry, that was wife aggro.
No, it's fine.
Okay. I was just really confused. I thought I was being interrupted. I'm like,
yeah,
I can stop.
I knew why you kind of stopped, and I was like, eh. All right,
let's throw this over to Demon. Well, sorry. What are your thoughts on PonPon's comments there regarding the teams and just how they're organized, how they present themselves, stuff like that?
I mean, it's all, you got to have the PR, you got to have the coaching. The staff's basically, if you look at any sports team, it's got coaches, trainers, all these different things to help you work on specific core mechanics like your running, your throwing, your jumping, whatever it happens to be. So you're going to get those kind of things whenever you start up a team like this. It might not need to be to that extent, but they will need to have that freedom of being their full-time job if they want to get better. And that, I think it's good and bad at the same time. It's great because you're making it a giant investment into the game, but if you don't have enough teams, then it could get not awesome, I guess is the best way of putting it. Because then you kind of, I don't want to say, like, trounce people they do it on the weekends. They do it when they have the time to, and they want to try and get professional and make it their full-time job. But it's like, I'm never going to be able to compete these guys that have coaches and this stuff and that stuff. And it's like, then it kind of, shoots a lot of that unfound talent out, possibly. So I don't know how much I want that, but I do want that. So it's very back and forth on that.
It could probably push the tournaments up to a level. So like you get the Hi-Rez tournaments would be the top end guys, but then you'd need the casual tournaments, the other 5v5s for people to kind of like build their skills, get a little known, and then move up, so to speak. So you don't jump straight into the top one. You kind of work your way into it. So like staging would probably help a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be like a professional league and then an amateur league, and so you can just kind of filter back and forth. Yeah.
My issue with that is it's kind of already a thing, though. Like, the Hi-Rez tournament in NA has, 7 or 8 teams that stay roughly the same every week. And then there's the casual tournament running on Sunday that has teams that could probably compete. And if, they got a good seed, they got, they probably make it to the round of 4. But they just stick to the casual tournament. And I want to see more teams in the Saturday tournament for me anyway, just because like you gotta go at it, you gotta bang your head against the Dignitas wall, basically.
They need ambition. They need ambition. That's what it is. Yeah.
It's very frustrating admitting the EU tournament because it's like we went our second or third week. We actually had to break out the 32 team brackets because we had like 30, I think. It was something.
That's
it was
awesome
25.
though. Yeah.
But it was like the third or fourth week we did that, and then it was great. There were so many teams playing. There's so many games going on. Everything ran great. And then it's just they're like, we can't compete against Cognitive, SK, Bipolar, and they're like, we're just not going to even try anymore. I'm like, ah. And they're like, well, we're not playing anymore because we get seeded up against these guys the first round. I'm like, well, there's nobody else to seed you up against. If we had more teams, maybe you could play some more. But nobody wants to step up and be those teams to, filter in and be that extra people. And so people need to get out of the mindset that, well, I can't beat Cognitive, so I'm not going to play. It's just, I want to play, come in and play, and the more people we get, the more likely you're going to get a reasonable matchup in the first round, because it won't just be Cognitive and those. If I have to break out the 32-team bracket, then Cognitive, like the top 6 teams, are likely going to get a bye unless we actually have 32 teams.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. I mean, it's awesome to see the EU scene so large and everyone participating in the tournaments like that. I mean, Wristy and I were talking about that the other day on their previous Smite update about how like you guys have such a huge bracket, and we'd love to see that here. But hopefully we start to see that a little bit more. Any last comments there before we move on to our next question?
As a side note, I think this might be a minor way to alleviate that. Right now, it's right now if you lose, you get knocked out, and I totally understand this is for time constraints and playing in those tournaments. I know those tournaments can run for hours and hours, but if you could ever get into a situation where like you could do losers bracket, like those teams would then be able to play against people who got knocked out first round by maybe like Dignitas and Cog, and then they might be able to go back a little bit more into it before getting knocked out by one of the other big teams that got knocked down to the losers bracket, and that would be more incentive for them to keep going, motivation, because not being knocked out first round every single week, it does get disheartening as much as you might want something.
Yeah,
but,
we did a losers bracket one time in the casuals because we were like, we're gonna give it a shot. See how it almost literally doubled the time.
Yeah, that's the downside.
Too?
It's essentially that's what double elimination is.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was best of 3 double elimination.
That's gonna take forever.
Oh yeah, that takes forever.
Yeah. You
I
couldn't do
remember
like
that.
a whole lot for that. No.
I remember this
That would
discussion
take
like
months.
8 months ago, where like people were arguing over
easily
formats.
a full weekend.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's
I
get
don't
on to the
think
next
there's a good
question we got.
solution.
All right. What do you feel needs to happen in the esports, Smite esports scene for it to actually go to the next level? Let's throw that. PonPon. Let's go with PonPon for that one.
Kind of what I said before. I think just teams need to be able to start making their living off Smite. If you want to see the difference between really professional teams and professional teams that are just currently the top teams at the moment, once you start pumping money into it, you'll see this huge spike in caliber. I think that's the biggest thing.
I know this question isn't necessarily Hi-Rez, Gavin and Duke's kind of area esports in particular, but looking at it from your perspective, what do you guys feel your game, your company needs to do in order to take you from where we're at now to the whole next level, the next plateau up? What are your thoughts? We'll go ahead and throw it to Duke first.
Well, I think Pon has a really solid concept of what needs to happen. If people can actually play the game professionally, that changes things, and that's not entirely on. Not to pass the buck here or anything, but that's not entirely on us.
Yep.
I mean, some of that. People won't like that I say this, but some of that is really on the players marketing themselves as well.
Sure.
Obviously, we need to get the game out there, but we just signed a contract with Tencent.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're not making a commitment. I don't know that I can't speak for the esports side of whether we've made the commitment that people are necessarily looking for yet, but I mean that's a pretty big one. If people pay attention, which most of you guys have recognized already, but I think the players need to get really good at marketing themselves, not just as players, but marketing themselves as a team. I mean, you see some of these guys that have kind of bounced around to different sponsors, and they've. I don't know details of contracts or anything like that. I don't know that Bart does, but he would know more of it than I do. But I do know that these guys recently have done a pretty darn good job of marketing themselves to people as a team, not just as I'm the best mid laner, I'm the best this, that, and the other. So
Yeah.
So I know there's things that we need to do, and I know there's things in the works. I mean, obviously we sat on something for a year that was probably the biggest news in our company's history.
Yeah.
So it's not like things aren't happening. Whether if just because you don't see it doesn't mean things aren't happening. But also I think there is a little bit of responsibility on the players themselves and on the community themselves to be like, hey, we are a competitive game, and that this team proves that we're competitive. This team proves that we're competitive. Not this person, this person, this person, but this team, this team, this team. So.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I chose the wording of players need to. They need to be able to make a living off the game, and that's not necessarily on Hi-Rez to do. That's like whenever you go for like a job, you go out, you market yourself, you present yourself in the best way you can, and hope people will essentially hire you. That's kind of what sponsors are. They're hiring you to market their product, and so it's partially on Hi-Rez, but a lot of it is on the players going out and finding the sponsorships like Dignitas has, and it's definitely not just on Hi-Rez.
Well, let's go ahead. This is actually I have to jump in, Wristy. This is actually the next question. Duke, you actually jumped us right into it, so I have to merge these two together. Right now, Hi-Rez Studios is the biggest financial backer in the scene for tournament prize pools. Do you think this affects the scene in a positive or negative way? Reason I say that is, all of a sudden you stop offering all this money to all of these different tournaments. What happens to the competitive scene? Does it dry up and it's gone? Because we don't have a lot of these outside sponsors. We don't have these outside organizations that can literally say, hey, here's $1,000, here's $5,000. Let's go ahead and offer it to this tournament. I'll just throw it out there. Anybody pick it up?
Oh, I'll take it. One of the biggest problems is the fact that in order to have a very successful esport, you must have a very big casual base, because if nobody's playing the game, nobody's going to watch it.
Yep.
So you have to have an extremely large casual base that wants to watch these pro players play. And currently, with the state of how many it is, it's not worth getting into Smite for companies because they can go to League and have the 100 times the size of a casual base. And so why would they put their money behind these guys right now when they can just work on building a League team or something like that? Because they'll easily get... It's all about the return on investment for the sponsors. If they get nothing out of it, then either A, they're just making a big gamble and they're just taking a risk, or they have too much money and they don't know what to do with it and they're just throwing it around. And so other than that, if you're lucky enough to get one of those two, then you got really no recourse as to how to make it a full-time job, so to speak, other than building up your own fan base or whatever. But still, that falls on the community size. I mean, Lass's streams and he gets 800 viewers on tournament day. Other than that, I don't really keep track of his numbers too often, but I think he's in the 2 or 3, maybe 500s on an average day. So I think that's close to what you need to start making a successful living from it.
Sure.
But it's still far from Phantom Lord, who streams League, who gets 20,000 viewers whenever he's streaming.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's far and away a full-time job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as the players playing, though, not just watching, when you look at the casual and the competitive scene, you kind of see this with StarCraft 2 and a little bit with League of Legends. So League of Legends is so big that there's other tournaments out there that the casual teams can kind of get away with. But StarCraft 2, Blizzard has a monopoly on the competitive scene in that game. If Blizzard isn't running it, there's pretty much nothing going on. If they're not running any major tournament without MLG, we saw it the other day. They announced that, there's no MLG tournament for StarCraft 2, so people blew up and wondered why. Why is this happening? There's no competitive scene anymore. I'm leaving StarCraft 2. So the fact that Hi-Rez Studios is providing the only financial backing right now for the game, it is good, but I feel other companies sort of need to step up to and provide the financial backing for these smaller tournaments as well. For instance, when we look back at past tournaments, the My Revenge, the Curse, those were still being backed by Hi-Rez Studios. That wasn't coming out of Curse's pocket.
Yep.
It wasn't coming out of My Revenge's pocket. The only one I can think of was Woggle. That was coming out of someone's personal pocket. Now, that kind of broke off and it didn't succeed. It didn't continue, but it still was a start, and then nobody else kind of picked it up from there. So right now, it's a very positive thing because the game is small, it's growing, and the tournaments are still going. But as a World Championships type deal starts to become in the plans for Hi-Rez, it may turn into a negative thing, because again, if they start to go the Blizzard route where they're putting a monopoly on all the competitive scenes, then I personally feel companies need to sort of stay out of controlling the entire tournament scene. There needs to be a split somewhere along the line.
Gavin, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, I don't really have much to weigh in. I'm
Okay.
personally very new on esports, the whole scene.
Sure.
So I don't want to. I feel like my opinion would have too much weight with it, and it shouldn't. So I'm not going to weigh in.
Okay, no problem. Sounds good. Well, any last comments, guys? Any last thoughts there? I mean, it's a delicate subject because it's like, okay, do we keep enjoying the luxury of having money thrown at the scene in order to kind of build this nice base and foundation? Or do we completely rip apart the foundation and say, okay, let's hope the scene stabilizes and some organization jumps in that has money? Any last thoughts?
I would
Well,
love
I
to.
actually had something to throw in, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll go. Okay.
You got this.
Alright. I think right now, if you were to pull funding from the tournaments and Hi-Rez were to completely step out, I think you would still have tournaments going. Obviously, I think Tier Monster would be a big potential to step up and do a tournament. They'd move their Code Green series to something else. There's a few people who would take up tournaments. I just don't know if the prize pool would be there. I think teams would still compete, but it'd be much nicer to have the Hi-Rez backing. I would love to see what happens, though, after the China scene gets into it. And because that's going to be a lot of people now suddenly like involved into it. Yeah. And you can see a huge growth in players watching, whole bunch of players now interested, now potential for sponsors to come in. And I think if 2 or 3 months down the line, Hi-Rez would pull back, and the scene continues to thrive, I think that'd be a good sign that things are going to be okay. And I think there's good potential for that as well.
Well, it's definitely a delicate scene because it's like they could completely destroy their game if they go ahead and pull the funding at the wrong time. So I completely agree with you. I mean, and just to add there, guys that didn't know, I guess Todd had mentioned in that video that was linked at the beginning, the Asian markets beta opens in October.
Yeah, so 2 or 3 months.
Yep. Someone else had a comment. Was that Duke or who else was that?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay.
Super quick, or I'll try to be super
go
quick.
for it.
I've said that before. Yeah, Demon laughs. All right, super quick. I said it again, and I still haven't even gotten to the point. So, sort of on this, in the same line of reasoning as what Pon said, but with a twist. What happened with Tencent has already gotten a lot of people excited about what's going on with Smite enough to do bigger things for Smite than have ever been done. What I can talk about is what you saw. I mean, at Gamescom, you saw. You know, we talked about production value, right? And you saw it was the highest production value anything that Smite's had in a public forum like that, right? Well, that happened because ESL was so excited they brought their best crew period to Gamescom. They didn't have for some reason I mean, I'm not passing judgment on anyone,
Sure.
but for some reason instead of using their German crew who is good, they used their Polish crew who is best in their company to cover Smite at Gamescom. Because they were that excited. They're like, we're not going to give you guys, you know, our German crew who is local to Gamescom is great, but we're going to give you our guys who are our best because we're excited about what's going on with Smite. So there's already things going on behind the scenes like that.
Yeah.
That as you witnessed, you guys have already gotten the benefit of. Now, as far as sponsors and stuff like that, that's in a slightly different realm, but it's the same concept of, wow, Tencent's on board with Smite, we probably should be too.
Yeah, you can definitely tell on the production side. I think everybody here can vouch from it that's not part of Hi-Rez. I mean, it was night and day that from what we saw from the previous packs and stuff like that. So congratulations to you guys. It was very impressive.
Well, again, I mean, shout out to Gavin for making awesome art assets for the ESL crew to use. But
if they can get the numbers right, they can only get the numbers right.
Yeah, but Gavin knocked it out of the park there. But then they really, like I said, they didn't bring their A game. They brought their A team, and it was noticeable. Obviously for the players, but it was noticeable for us because we're like, oh man, how's this gonna go? And it's like, wow. This is
I will say that working
the
with
best presentation we've ever had for any of our games ever.
Yeah, they're working with their Polish team was just an absolute pleasure. They were like, when it was probably like 2, 3 in the morning, they'd still be getting back to me, like shooting emails back and forth. And sometimes, there was just translation issues, but still, like the fact that I could send them an email at 3 a.m. for them and hear back from them immediately with feedback was just wonderful.
That's a good step. Do you have another organization working with you guys on the packs, or no? Is that somebody else completely, or it's just you guys?
We do, but I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about who they are yet.
That's fine. That's fine. At least if there might be a possibility, that's great. Because all the reason I say that is as a fan and as a viewer, and as I'm looking at it from the scene, it's great to see that okay, you guys have somebody for that too, so it's not lacking. So that's awesome. Any last comments there regarding, we talked about financial backing and Hi-Rez pulling it if they're at a certain moment, the Asian scene, and now we just talked about ESL and Gamescom. Any last comments from you guys? All right, jumping forward, we're going to jump into professional organizations. Do you feel the competitive scene is ready for another team league? If so, would it have to be hosted by Hi-Rez Studios like the NA and the EU Weekly, or is there another organization that comes to mind that could host it? Keep in mind, we did have a previous team league, Woggle, that we did go through a season with them. Let's go ahead and throw this to Coop, as he has the most insight with Woggle, and then we'll jump around the table.
With Woggle, for all of you just that are just now getting into the scene, basically for those of you that don't know what Woggle was, it was just a gaming league for many different games, but we chose to do Smite, and this was back in last September. And basically it was a full-length season, about an 8-week season, with another 5 weeks for playoffs. Now, besides all of the back-end stuff that happened, and you know what I'm talking about if you're around that time, I don't need to go into that, but from the feedback I heard, it was just too long. Teams couldn't commit to 8 weeks of scheduling their matches. I mean, things happen week to week that, we just can't make it this week. We can't play on this certain day. We can't play on this day. So 8 weeks commitment plus another 5 weeks for playoffs, which is double elim during the playoffs. It's a little bit too long for commitment. So I think as far as the league goes, if it was shortened a little bit, and the playoffs kind of jumped right in after the regular season, I think it could be good. I think it's not necessarily a thing that Smite has to be ready for. I think it's just something someone needs to do. Now, does it have to be hosted by Hi-Rez? I kind of touched about that on the last topic. I don't think it should be. I think someone should definitely run it themselves with a prize pool hosted by themselves, and that would be very good for the community to help thrive it and push it forward. Otherwise, you just have Hi-Rez being the only backer of the game. But that's what I'm going to go with for that.
Any other thoughts on that? Yeah, we have two competitive players on. What are your thoughts, either of you guys, on would you guys be interested in a team league, or is there no real interest there?
I would love to see a team league. I mean, I agree with Cooper that it's a big time investment and you have to dedicate to it, but I think it would be a great way to see how teams match up against each other in more than just like the way brackets work out in the tournaments. Because, I mean, I don't know. I just think it would be really awesome to. And I think it would be a way to allow the teams that aren't in, like the S tier and the A tier, you're like B tier teams who are still really good at the game to show that they are that good, that they can compete, not, to the highest extent, but they can compete well and they can, do impressive stuff.
But the whole biggest problem with all these leagues was team hopping. I mean, that was the teams couldn't stay together past 3 or 4 weeks. So, I mean,
yeah, I was going to bring that up.
PonPon is like our keynote speaker on that one right now. But, I mean, like, look at when I think Woggle started, it was like BLG, my team had a roster that by the end of it was just like completely different. It was just, so how do you work out all the logistics with that? Like the same problem we actually have currently with the EU and NA scenes is, at what point do you reset their wins and losses if, like for E-Lemon, if they only have Proxy and one other guy and they change out 3 members, is that still the same team or should it be a new team or what? I mean, at what point does the name change officially to where it's a new whole team? Because it could be that, we just leave the scene and then somebody's like, well, I'm going to make a team and I'm going to name it E-Lemon. And, not even the same people at all. And they're just like, they want to take the name. And, So I guess that's.
And real quick before Pon speaks on that, I mean that kind of ties into the adminning of the event. I mean, it's on the players to say, okay, we're going to go into this as a 5-man team, and this is with esports all across the board. If you have internal issues and you just decide to drop the team, you can't. And there's a roster lock, you can't just pick up the 5 players in the middle of a season. That's just it doesn't happen. So it would, even though it sucks and it is a small game and it would kind of hurt the competitive scene a little bit, it is on the admin to say, oh, we're sorry. You either have to compete with the 5 players that you have, just kind of push through it. You don't have to like each other, but still play with each other, or we have to drop you guys and you're out. So it does suck, but that's kind of what happens. You have to. It falls on the admin to do that.
I definitely think the biggest thing that needs to happen though for a league to work is 1, stable teams, and 2, enough interest to hold people's attention for however, like if even if it's just a month for the tournament, 4 weeks. You have to hold their attention for that long. It can't be, oh, we would love to do this, but we have other tournaments, other things taking our attention away from it. And you have to provide enough incentive for teams to, like, all of a sudden, if they hate each other, stay together just until this league is over. I think you have stable enough teams now, hopefully. I think everyone's kind of evened out a little bit. I just don't know if the interest is there. I bet you teams like Dignitas, COG, Denial on the EU side, like COG EU, like they would definitely be interested in it. But you definitely need a large base of smaller teams to make it interesting for people to watch.
Sure.
And I think if you kind of failed in that regard, it'd be hard to do. So you'd have to get a whole bunch of like tier A teams, tier B teams really into it as well.
So we might not be ready right now. I mean, that's the big thing is maybe as I think it was Duke or Gavin had commented, I think it was Duke, about how, or somebody had commented on waiting until the Asian market has had some time and we all of a sudden see this huge growth of player base, huge growth of attention, and then all of a sudden we have more teams that are out there. Because, I mean, for what it sounds like, I mean, we don't really have a huge handful of teams that could keep people interested week in and week out with a team league. Does that sound pretty correct?
Well, I think a current problem right now is there's not enough interest for teams to be in the competitive scene because they know they're going to get knocked out by Dignitas first round.
Okay.
I think if you were to do a league and do it really well, and this is kind of why I think right now it would require Hi-Rez backing.
Sure.
Because I think they have the best chance of getting people interested into it. I think this could actually be a good way to jumpstart the competitive scene and bring a whole bunch of teams in because they realize, oh, even if we get paired up against Dignitas, we're going to be paired up against 8 other teams throughout the league, and we'll see how we do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit old school with my esports. I used to play a lot of tribes, and in tribes, God, I forget the organizations, but they ran ladders, and I don't know if that's still like considered viable or anything, but it's kind of nice because the top teams would sort of stay at the top, and you'd climb up, and then you start challenging people, and if you change your roster, it's like, okay, you're dropped off the ladder, come back into the bottom or whatever. I don't know how this works, but I think there are formats league-like that can work. And, I mean, the other topic is there are a lot of teams, and, like, I know lots of people, so when my team goes for scrims, like, we ask so many teams, and I see, I scrim teams that don't play in the casual tournament and don't play in the Saturday tournament, and, like, there are so many. They just need to play, please.
Any last comments there on team leagues? Jumping off of that, I just had a question, and we were talking about it. What are your guys' thoughts on leagues in the game? Is this something that you feel that we need, as we've seen it with several other esports giants, which kind of fuels that casual grassroots kind of scene with the competitive side being in the leagues? Or do you feel that the leagues aren't really something that we need in Smite, and we're kind of content with the rank system that's currently in play?
I personally would love to see Smite make use of, like, there was a team ranked for a while, and I think if you could really, really pump a lot of, like, here, this is going to be our ladder, and you had to do some rules and how it had to queue certain ways, but if you could even make it to, like, top 15 or top 16 teams that qualify because you got the highest ranking in the team ranked, you get to go do this. I would love to see a league, because leagues, ladder systems, they don't necessarily require you to win because you get to just play a whole bunch of games as a team. And I think that's something that's really, really important. That I think even if it's not like fully supported, I think it just being there is a good thing.
Because it looks like teams were a huge deal when like they first came out. I was like, oh my gosh, but then I feel like it kind of fell off, and the team ranked kind of fell off a little bit. I mean, it'd be kind of interesting, just a quick thought, to think about having qualifiers for qualifiers for like a monthly tournament hosted by Hi-Rez or another organization, whoever, maybe Hi-Rez because of the way it worked, but qualifiers that worked through the team ranking system. So in NA, you had to get in the top 6 or the top 8 to qualify, and it was all through team ranked. I mean, it would be cool to see some more interaction between the in-game team rankings and leagues and stuff like that, and then what it reflects to, because as you said there, like, it would be great to have more people playing ranked and playing team ranked, and you could build that entire, as Demon Machine had talked about, build that entire like grassroots casual side could still be interested, and then they could even qualify for some of these like big tournaments that we see with Dignitas and some other people in there. Any other thoughts on leagues and stuff like that?
I think something like that might be cool, but there are, intrinsic problems with the team rank system. I used to be on my Electric, and I still love those guys. I'm still friends with Panda, but they're, I think, still listed as the #1 ranked team because their practice time was 3 a.m. Eastern, and so they didn't face anyone who can put up a challenge to them. They're completely undefeated in team ranked, and maybe anyone is, a bit of an exaggeration, but basically they didn't get good matches. They got, okay, there's 2 teams in queue, so we're just going to put these 2 together, and that's the nature of the system when you don't have a flood of teams. And then the other issue is just the reset issue. Like, when do you reset a team's ELO? When they, have roster changes. That has to be built into the system, because if it's not, then it's like, okay, our team placed number 5, so now the pro player who's really, really good on team number 9 and like one of his friends are going to join our team and go to the tournament or something like that. I don't know. There are problems with it. I think it would be cool, but it would require a lot of thought and careful implementation to be effective.
Yeah, leagues could also be interconnected with ELO. I mean, I don't know does anyone know maybe Hi-Rez could tell us when the last time ELO was reset? But
it was just reset once thus far.
Yeah,
2
exactly.
months.
Yeah, it was a couple months ago.
Okay, I guess my question is to the Hi-Rez guys, and I know you can't give us a ton of info, but I assume leagues have been discussed. Maybe you guys maybe you could tell us, is there more negative sides and things that we're not understanding as the public and as viewers as to why we haven't seen leagues? Is there something that we haven't tapped on about that?
No, leagues are good.
Okay.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with leagues. It's just, as far as like implementing them in the game, that's a huge development art.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's not a logistical nightmare. It's just a huge development art. So,
okay.
Leagues probably shake out ratings better ultimately than a normal ELO system, in my opinion. Strictly in my opinion. That's not the opinion of the studios.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, leagues are part and parcel to a clan system, honestly. But it's a huge development art. So it's not something out of anyone's mind. It's just there are higher priorities at the moment.
Sure. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go ahead and jump on next question here. We'll keep things moving. And start out here. How do you feel Hi-Rez Studios can bridge the gap between the North American and European competitive scene, soon to be the Asian scene as well, as currently cross-server online tournaments are almost unheard of due to server ping times? I'll go ahead and throw this over to Demon.
I mean, you just got to do LAN tournaments is about it. Other than bridging the gap, there's not really much you can do in this. The way we tried it several times, or with like Curse and those, where you had to higher seed get server choice or something like that, was an option, but it's not optimal by any stretch. But having region locked areas is how it's been running now. People are pleased with that when they can stay connected to the game. Other than that, it's just you'd have to do LAN tournaments to really bridge that, and that's where you have to get into really big money to make that work.
Yeah.
Because flying people over from China or from Europe to here to play or here to Europe to play, getting people all in one location is very expensive.
Sure.
That's why online tournaments are great, because it's super cheap. Show up here now. All right, good, you're done.
Any other thoughts on bridging the gap between the different scenes right now?
I don't know if you really need to bridge the gap. I think right now there's I think the focus should be more on getting your own scene interested. Like EU is doing a good job of that right now. They're having to bump up to like the 32-man bracket,
Yeah.
and they could use some work in getting a whole bunch of people interested. But I think right now there isn't really a need to bridge the gap between NA and EU. For a long time, NA and EU were just separate on League of Legends, and that was fine until you got these big, huge LAN events. But until you can regularly fund those big, huge LAN events, there's really nothing you could do. Stop developing Smite, develop quantum computing, go back to Smite. That's about all you could do otherwise.
Any other comments there regarding just the gap right now that exists currently between the different scenes? All right, well, let's go ahead and take it on. I'll hand it over to Wristy to handle the current state of the game. Go ahead, Wristy.
Yeah, I was kind of going. So we've got all the esports and stuff now. So just kind of the game as it is. It was the first question is, what mechanic added to the game do you feel has made the greatest impact? And I'll throw that over to Crit because I haven't actually put anything to him yet. Crit, yeah, that's it.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was right. Yeah, cool.
By mechanic, do you mean like sort of like core game mechanics? Like this is an idea that multiple characters might have access to. Cripple, for example.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
I think the biggest impact is just the idea of an item that makes a role easier. I think it's a little bit brute force, but I respect that. And so, like, Watcher's Gift is specifically like, you put it on your support, they get more gold. Midas Boots, you put it on your support, they get more gold. Bumba's Mask. At this point, like, it doesn't have all the flashy benefits it doesn't have. It used to have. You don't run faster. You don't get more experience. You don't get bonus gold. You just, like, share less gold. Now it's just MP5 and health sustain and, like, a little bit of gold in mid camps or whatever. And yet, like, these items are still there. They're still used because they help people do a certain role in a certain way, which I think is really, really cool. And it's not a huge mechanic shift. It's like, oh, man, this god's not viable anymore. But it's very subtle, and it affects the game in a big way, despite appearing to not do that much.
Yeah, I fully agree with that one. Like, when they brought Bumba's Mask bit down to it's just the MP5 was quite nice. The extra... Everything else was a bit extreme.
Yeah, and now I think
balance.
It's interesting too. Like, it used to just be like, Bumbas does everything, buy it. But I don't jungle with Bumbas anymore, and lots of people disagree with me, but I think there are better options. So it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, just for the sustain. Anybody else? No? Okay. So,
Go ahead.
oh, right.
Actually, I'll have one. Barring Bumbas, because I think that alone counts as a mechanic, and the role of the jungle, because I think the jungle has a huge impact. I think another thing is very powerful low cooldown actives, mainly pure beads. I think the difference between someone having pure beads 1 versus pure beads 3, the way you fight them, and having 90 seconds of a cooldown versus 240 is very huge. And I think that has, like, when someone buys that, the way the game is played, the way teams fights are played, immediately shifts in a really hard way. And I'm not even sure whether it's for good or bad. It's just, I've noticed that very powerful actives with very low cooldowns, they have very, very, very impactful ways they change the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't really kind of. I don't really play a high level, so I don't really run into that problem too much. So yeah, I can kind of understand where you're coming from though. Like when you get level 3 beads, unless like Ares, for example, gets like cooldown reduction, it's just nullified completely. So just things like that. All right. Nobody else, I guess. No. Okay, so I'm going to go into the next one. It's more, I'm going to aim this more to like the Hi-Rez employees like Duke or Gavin for this one. It's kind of like an escalating topic for me that when it comes to cripple, well, just generally leaps and gap closers in the game, right? We were starting to see like an increase of jumps in the game and dashes, so then cripple was implemented, which I kind of thought cripple itself was more of like a band-aid fix for a larger problem. And now what we're actually seeing is going from just one jump to gods to they now have like 2 dashes where you've got Fenrir, for example, he's got his leap, then brutalized, then also we got Humbat going into like the monkey toss teleport. So I'm just kind of thinking, do you see the problem escalating even worse to what it currently is now, and the fact possibly maybe working on like a different type of implementation for cripple, possibly.
Duke, do you have anything to say to that in response?
A different.
I can hear you over the typing. I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, like, Cripple, I liked the addition of Cripple. I agree with the jumping thing, but that was my personal opinion on the game. Just like the jumping thing was starting to get a little crazy. I like the addition. That's just a personal opinion, but I can't say where the designers, like, what they had in mind when they were doing any of this stuff or adding and how they feel balance works in this game.
Yeah. I don't know that Cripple was necessarily intended originally to be something that's like, let's put this on a bunch of people. But I think the more they looked at it, the more they're like, there needs to be some better options for locking people down without necessarily having to have a stun on a lot of these characters that don't have them, and that there's no reason for us to necessarily add it to them. So, adding Cripple made it kind of gave you a little bit of the answer. Now, some people are pretty upset that there's as much CC in the game as there is now, but whatever. Things swing like that back and forth. So we'll see what happens with it. But to me, I think Cripple was a huge addition to the game. That it gives you it. I mean, it's basically a new form of CC in MOBAs, honestly, because it's like you can still do everything. You can still do all the attacks you want to do. You just can't get out of this. And so it brings a little bit of a... To me, I feel like it brings a one new strategic element to the genre that you wouldn't necessarily see elsewhere.
I feel like they, looking at it over the last several months, I feel like we've had a ton of gods added to the game that had escapes. And then all of a sudden, just from my point of view, it looked like Cripple was added to counter that. Because it was like, oh crap, all these gods we're putting out have all these leaps, they have these escapes, this jumps. How do we counter that? How do we add something in there? What about our competitive players? What do you guys think about Cripple? Was it something added just in order to counter all of that? Or do you think it was a mechanic that was necessary?
I think it was something that was directly added to kind of counter the leaping. It definitely felt like when it was added, it was here's how we can not only make some champions better, but how we can give them this new utility of countering leaps. And leaps are kind of going haywire. I still think Cripple sometimes doesn't have the intended effect that it should. A lot of cases, Cripple will actually apply late, and so even if you get hit by a Cripple, you'll still be able to leap out of it. But other than that, it was definitely added to help alleviate the leaps and dashes, and I think it's kind of a needed mechanic at this point.
Hey, real quick, let me jump in on that, Pon.
Sure.
Sorry, Kret. Real quick, send me a list of everything that applies late. So I can make the game more nightmarish for everyone.
It's the AoEs. Like Ares Cripple will apply instantly, but something like Poseidon Whirlpool or Cupid Ult doesn't.
Yeah, because
it'll like wait
like
for
that,
like
right.
a half second.
Yeah, it's the way it ticks. Okay, all right, cool.
I really hope you guys don't change that window. I love that window. It saves me so much. Because I'm an instant cast player. I'm like, oh god, Cripple, dash, dash, dash. But I actually really like Cripple because originally it was sort of just like, there are too many dashes, let's fix that. But then it sort of like became this interesting way of adding another crowd control that it's not really hard CC, but it kind of is in a certain situation. And now it just becomes really interesting. So like, the other day we were doing some scrims and we had a Hades and Arachne, and the other team was like, wait a second, Web plus Hades is horrifying. And these are two like not particularly, super important to pick gods, but Arachne's Web now, you just don't want to stand in it. And before it was really slow, but now like it's slow and you can't get out of it. Or Cupid's ult, which is the most unique ultimate in the game, and it's just this terrible like death zone. It's awesome. I love Cripple.
those Field of Hearts just kind of, oh crap, I can't go.
It shouldn't be
now.
nearly as terrifying as it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it kind of feels weird that it just switches off your abilities sometimes. It's kind of like, don't worry about that one. Anything else?
I feel like we can make it a little more obvious, because especially with new players who are experiencing it for the first time, they're like,
why is my
stuff's
thing's not
broken?
working?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like an icon and like how skills work can go a long way. Like Ares chaining you and Arachne webbing you to the ground, those make a lot of sense. But why is Cupid Hearts stopping me from leaping? I think that there's ways it could be improved, but I definitely like the mechanic of cripple.
Have you ever tried walking through balloon hearts?
I guess I haven't.
You can't jump for shit.
It's static electricity, bro.
You ain't going nowhere. Well, I suppose you could kind of add it to the stun timers at the top of the character and stuff like that, potentially. Because when they were added, they were actually quite good. At first it was like, oh, I wonder what they're going to do. And then when we actually saw them in place, it was like, so now I know exactly when I'm going to get out of the stun and stuff like that. So maybe...
Yeah,
I didn't
anything
realize...
that gives the player more information is better.
I didn't realize Cripple didn't have that. That may have been a like an intentional thing that someone didn't think it through all the way or something like that. So I'll bring it up. That I thought for sure that was in the status effect bars. So yeah, that should.
I mean, all it really does right now is just X out your ability. What would be really nice would be having maybe like a pair of feet above your head that have like a circle and a cross to it, so you're looking at yourself and you see this giant. Oh, I can't move.
Well, I mean, if you just did it like the other status bars, that would be cool. I mean, because each one has a symbol, has its own symbol. Once you learn those symbols, you're like, oh yeah, I'm stunned, I'm silenced, I'm this, that, and the other.
Yeah, some player education would be great. I mean, even taking advantage of the load screen would be great. I don't know if that could be redesigned or not, but some of those recommendations we see at the bottom are more focused on the gods that are currently playing in that game. So you could say, hey, Cupid has X or Poseidon has Y on his ability, that causes this. So that for new players, it's the education. I mean, someone like PonPon doesn't need to be educated on Cripple when it occurs because he knows it's going to occur. But to a new or casual player, the more education when you can provide to a player, I think the better.
Yeah, like on the loading screen, like right below the character, have these little cute icons. Like this god has a cripple and a stun. Yep. This god has XXX. Like whatever the thing is.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much comes down to educating the users and making it. I mean it's pretty much holding their hand is what it is. I mean, and that's what you have to do. Because players get frustrated when they don't understand what's going on, especially new players. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are. Somebody might know them or somebody, but like. How long does a new player play before they get frustrated with a game and walk away from it because they don't understand what's going on? I think it's a very important thing.
For me, it's about 15 minutes.
I mean, like, one of the things, for instance, with the cripple, how many new players don't realize that there even is a small window of time before it applies? They might just assume, I'm in this whirlpool, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
There's not like, oh, the whirlpool just applied, I have 1/2 of a second to literally jump out of it.
What if we had a tips thing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like that's just part of, the players who playing the game competitively are going to know, like, the little things, sometimes to the extent that even the developers won't know them. So, like, Shibulonke's speed resets when you activate or deactivate Branching Bolas. You can auto-attack, activate it, and then you're back to full speed, so you can basically orb walk, which is awesome, but I don't think every Shibulonke player knows that.
Or another good example, which is coming up here, is the Chronos thing, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was unsure if I was going to put that in, and I thought, I'm getting a bit off topic. So.
If you know what the Chronos thing is, that was something that's been known for like a while now, and has been kept under wraps just because of how potentially breaking that is.
It wasn't under wraps. I told someone about it, and there was a miscommunication in the office. Let's put it that way. Basically, I said, hey, do you know that this can happen? Yes, someone told me that was intended. And what the conversation actually was, I heard this morning, and it was hilarious. And what the conversation actually was it was intended to be fixed before it went live.
That's a giant miscommunication.
Yeah.
And so the person who was pushing on it when we realized it was an issue was just like, well, he said it was intended, but it was just communicated poorly. So that'll be fixed.
Yeah, when I saw that you could do that, like my jaw just hit the floor. I'm like, oh man, any counterplay is now gone.
That's why you should tell us in a message, because you have
if you don't know what it is, I'll type
people's email addresses. So you should
it's useful. to be fair, if we're gonna be playing competitively and we have a character that has a mechanic, we're probably
broken.
going to try and use it if the other team doesn't know about it. Or like if Naja
there's
Dash
that
or Naja
2-week
Stun decides to
period.
bug.
But there's that
Yeah.
2-week period where you discover it, and maybe we could fix it before they're actually in
True.
competitive play.
But then there's
True.
that 4-week
Yeah.
period where the Sash
God.
will pull you in.
Yeah, right?
True. Yeah, it'd be so fun. It's like just bust that out tournament and be like, oh, what just happened? So, I know. I try to report bugs as I find them, but that one was not found by me, and that person wanted me to be like, don't tell anyone.
keep it secret. It's
win.
broken.
I just want to throw this out there. Don't, if anyone tells you don't tell us, just don't listen to them in the future. Like, please. It's surprising how, I mean, like, Dukes and I hear this all the time. People talking in stream or, with us, and they're like, oh, you guys didn't know that? I felt like someone else told you. Or, yeah, I just felt like, you guys already knew. It's like, please, go out of your way, please. It makes the game better. It makes, it makes new players come in, and they, when they come to Reddit and they see, people reporting bugs that are being taken care of, they get excited, like, oh, wow, you guys are, listening to our feedback. So, like, it helps the whole community. So,
Yeah,
make sure you get on it.
Well, Gavin, I
Yeah,
guess my question is there for you, Gavin, just to feed off of that for letting people know. Where's the best place when people find a bug to report it so that everyone knows?
Hold on, let me find that link. I don't know. Duke's gonna find it for me before me.
Oh, and another point to bring up there is the Moobot that's been spamming "Go report bugs here" is still linking to the forums.
Incorrect. I fixed that today. Owned. Yeah.
Oh, you fixed it today?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. That was fixed today.
I fixed that hours ago.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Maybe even minutes.
Hey, Gamescom had me very busy, so I got.
Oh, yeah, I'm not holding it against you or anything. I just found that funny because every time Moobot would post, everyone was like, "God damn it, Moobot, just go away."
Yeah.
So wait,
there's-
didn't they used to have an ability in game where you could report bugs?
They used to be in the old UI long time ago.
Is there a reason why that was taken out? Like, was it abused or?
Spam a lot.
It gets.
Spam it. Yeah,
Is that what it
probably.
was? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. 'Cause-
In every game it exists, it gets completely abused. So
Okay.
yeah, we tried to.
People just get mad and then they're like, I'm going to report this as a bug because he killed me 500 times.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
good to
also
know.
Matchmaking is bugged. Every 2 out of 3 reports. Matchmaking's bugged. I got put in a blah 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 with a blah blah blah.
Yeah, it was also that one I kind of pointed out to Duke when we was doing the Smite update where the Neef's World Weaver would, if you were trying to aim at a player, it would bounce between a broken weave all the time when you was trying to like track them and stuff like that. So it was kind of like, is there like a priority balance that they can put
Well,
into fix that?
the key thing is there's there's posting bugs publicly, which something being broken is fine. Something being broken to the point of it like the Kronos thing, whether you know what it is or not in chat, something like that, get a private message to us somewhere on Twitch or something like that. That's not something you want to post publicly because obviously that could be a huge problem if everyone knows about that.
Okay, good to know.
So something that says, does this give me a obvious advantage over another player because I know this versus the person who doesn't know it? Okay, then I should probably report this privately.
Sure. No, good point. I'm glad we're discussing that there because that's definitely
Maybe
important.
this is a little bit of a tangent, but that kind of reminds me of the Neath Shubalanke hybrid bug, which was perhaps the most awesome thing in existence for that 2 days.
Are you talking about the back into a wall thing?
No, I think it was if you picked Shubalanke 3rd and Neath 4th,
Yeah.
then Neath turned into a Shubalanke that had a no cooldown, all 5 target World Weaver.
Wow.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Is this like the
That's
jungle and global
fantastic.
agenda?
What's
Is
that?
this like just a troll?
No, that
that
works.
was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Demon was killed by it, I remember.
I got done by it.
Yeah, the other bug that I knew about was the you could be hell at level 1 with 2 skills leveled up because of stance dancing. That was a bug for a long time.
Holy crap!
I wish I knew.
I told someone about
What
that
is
one.
this?
I told someone about that one.
Oh, and when you could
That
stack
one
the
I
buff
didn't keep
speed
secret.
buff,
Okay.
and it didn't go away, so you just zoom around at 800 move speed. Oh man. I love betas.
Now all the bugs are coming to light, and it's like, oh, it was reported, I swear.
No, the
Yeah.
hell
No,
one.
those
The hell
ones are
one's
dead.
fixed. The hell one I reported and it got fixed
That's good.
a long time ago.
That's good. That's good. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears, keep things moving here, guys. Let's go ahead and move into like the competitive player contracts, and it's kind of a touchy subject. Reveal what you can. Don't talk about what you don't have to. No big deal. How have player contracts evolved since the introduction of the first professional organization into the scene? So I'm going to go ahead and throw this over to Coop to start us out, give your opinion, and then we'll kind of move around the table.
Well, I'm gonna say pass because I'm not even an amateur player, so I've never had a contract.
All right. Anyone that has a contract, or that has heard about them, who knows about them, anything. How have we seen them evolved? I mean, where'd they start out at? Where are we at now? And now we have silence.
Is that a,
I mean, there's stuff that I could say about contracts, but
Sure.
I wouldn't know really how they've evolved since.
And what I mean by that, okay, because my thought process there is looking at contracts as they came directly into the scene. There wasn't really any, and going back to like where we're at with when Woggle started, we didn't really have any contracts because there weren't really any like professional organizations. But then once we started to see SK come into the scene and Root came into the scene, all of a sudden now we're seeing some type of even if it's a verbal contract or something, in order to lock some of these people in, some type of money incentive, advertising, gear, anything.
I think contracts from the first iteration, because
Yep.
I've now signed essentially 3 contracts.
Okay.
One was with Outlaw Esports, then Curse, and then now
Okay.
Denial.
Okay.
And the first contract was very loose, no sponsors. Basically, we agreed to use Outlaw Esports and nothing else.
Okay.
And that was just kind of it. The Cursed one had more stuff to it. We had to do certain things. Cursed would promise to provide us certain things. We had a period, and then when we disbanded on Cursed, we had to go through the steps of, okay, we're leaving the contract and end it. So that contract was way more formal. And moving in with Denial, their contract has been similarly formal.
Okay.
And so I think there's been definitely a step up on contracts. I think more contracts, especially with the bigger teams, will have more sponsors. They'll have more things players have to do to like continue to be sponsored. Like they have to. Generally, the biggest thing is content,
Okay.
YouTube, Twitch, etc. So I think that's the best way they've evolved since the beginning, from what I've noticed.
Okay. Anyone else have any input on that? Just things you've heard, anything like that, where someone has talked to you about it?
Yeah, I
just
have.
something. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Just something I noticed with the contracts, and I can't really give a lot of details because, like I said, I've never signed one. I've never actually physically seen a Smite contract, but some of them, depending upon the organization, and which is odd because the bigger organizations are the ones that I'm going to say this about. Some of them are pretty easy to get out of. Some of them aren't. I do know that with the Reason Gaming contracts, I believe, and don't quote me on this, Hero GG kind of took a break from the game because he literally could not get on a team because he was contract binded to Reason Gaming, so he kind of took a break, and then he might have still been playing, but he wasn't playing competitively, and now, of course, he's on Last Resort. Whereas Copenhagen Wolves, they kind of got out of that pretty easy, and were able to just kind of start up Bipolar again. And I believe they actually might have signed a contract with My Revenge as well, and they got out of that and went to Copenhagen Wolves right after that. So it really depends. I think now that Smite's starting to get a lot bigger, and of course with the Tencent introduction, you're going to see these organizations start to bind these contracts a lot more to the teams and say, no, you can't play. You've signed a contract. This game's getting big. There's money on the line. You can't stray.
That was my next question, was coming down to contract signing and actually having these team locks, because we all saw it where people were jumping ship back and forth to whoever was winning, whoever was offering the best, extra cash here and there. So I guess at this point we can kind of look at it and say we're most likely going to see player contract locks moving forward. It's kind of harsh to say that, but the professional organizations do need to protect themselves. I mean, they're in it to make money as well. Any other comments on the contracts?
Well, when it comes to like a player, oh, go ahead. I've been talking a lot.
All right, sure. Yeah, you talk too much. I do remember Love you, Pon. I do remember there was a team, I don't remember which one, but there was a team fairly early in Smite's history that was sponsored and had a buyout contract where if anyone was to join another team within a certain time period, they would have to pay a fee of some kind, which is really intense. And, like, I don't think that's present on some of the other teams in Smite's history, considering how much player hopping there is, people being in so much debt.
Yeah.
But I mean, then there's other things like, there was one contract I heard about that was like you can't join another professional team for like a month after you leave, or like a week or 2 weeks, just so, you know, like there's no strategies getting out or something like that. NDAs are a thing too, but I don't know. Esports contracts are kind of strange, just because some of them are really contractual and some of them are kind of just like, don't be a jerk to us, we're your friends, we give you stuff, and some of them are a little more casual.
Sure.
I think
Depends on
the
how
big
much
thing
money's
is
behind the company.
Yeah, I think the big thing is right now players, obviously, if they're looking at the contracts and competitive, they would love to probably be making a living off this game. And so if their best interest is if we team hop and we get 5 super strong players together from like 3 different teams, that is in our best interest because we now have like the strongest players, we can dominate a scene. And so it's partially players being kind of greedy / in their best interest wanting to protect themselves, because obviously if they can do that, they're in a really strong position, they can find a strong sponsorship and they can just move on. And so I think that's why you saw a lot of team hopping. People kept hopping teams back and forth looking for that strong 5. And now that that's been found, anyone going into the competitive scene is going to be like, yeah, we kind of want to lock our players down more. Plus, as more money gets pumped into this with Tencent, you're going to see more money. You're going to see more teams wanting to protect their players. Be like, no, you need to stay here. And I have seen you can't join another team for a month after the contract ends. I have seen stuff like that on contracts, and I think that's leaning towards that kind of locking players in.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. It's a a competition right there, and I can completely make sense of that. Any other comments there regarding contracts, locking, anything like that? All right, let's go ahead and move forward with the last question under competitive player contracts. Right now, is it viable financially for a competitive player to play Smite as a full-time job? This question does not apply to some guy living in his parents' basement or a high school student. I'm talking about some type of minimum wage style money. Let's say $30,000 a year. That could pay for a rent. That could pay for food, a living. Is it viable? Anybody want to take it? Throw it out there.
Yeah. I just want to say, right now, I think, and Pon actually typed it earlier in chat, I think, and I truly believe it too, is the only player actually doing that is Lass.
Now, why do you say that? Just so viewers know, why Lass?
Well, he's expressed many times that he, obviously had quit his job. This was a couple months ago, maybe even half a year ago now. And I mean, he streams all day. He's on all day, and he's playing these tournaments on the weekends. It really doesn't seem like he does much, and I think he's expressed several times. I can't quote him, but I think he's expressed several times that he is, making some money off this game and enough to live off of it. But the thing is it's not just off Smite. You have to take into account that it's off of his streaming as well, of other games, and just being in the community. He's a likable guy, so it's not just I can win a couple tournaments and play Smite. That's not feasible, but the fact that he streams, and he's been streaming for a year and a half now, that makes it possible for him.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point, is really the only person that could possibly say that they make a living is Lasses. Maybe Zatman. I think he recently got partnered / sub-buttoned, so maybe Zatman as well, but it's pretty much Lasses, and it's not the competitive Smite scene. They're streaming on Twitch.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're
that's
professional streamers before they are professional Smite players, I guess would be the best way of saying that.
I think if they were to make the call from being professional Smite players or continue to stream on Twitch, they'd probably just continue to stream on Twitch, because that's really what they're probably making most of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how they're supporting themselves. Even if you were to win every single tournament every single week, you probably wouldn't be able to live off that.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is looking at the streaming side. Those of you guys aren't familiar with contracts with Twitch and partnerships, you have the ability to pretty much make X amount, depending on your contract, per 1,000 people watching you per advertisement. So anywhere, depending on the person, between $2 up to $5, even more I've heard of, depending on how popular you are. And so that's per 1,000. So think of it. We just talked about some League of Legends players that were bringing in 20,000 people watching their stream. There's a big reason why some of these people can bring in $60, $70, $80, $90,000 a year just on Twitch revenue, and then go ahead and then also get paid 20 grand, 30 grand a year from their team and covering travel expenses, and they still get to keep all their tournament winnings. So outside of Smite, it's definitely there. It sounds like Lassus is on his way. But at this point, I guess the main thing is it viable? And I guess with my question, I guess from you guys answering it is yes. But I guess my question there is, are we going to see more and more people able to do this as the scene grows, as the Asian market gets introduced, and as we have a whole nother population added to it?
The more people you get involved, the more viewers you get, the more likely you'll be able to help support yourself on Twitch and supplement anything you might get from a team. So it might become more viable as people get contracts from teams saying the team will pay you $15,000 a year, and then you can supplement it with your Twitch viewership that also gives you $15,000 a year. So it's enough to make, both ends meet.
Yep.
Versus, they're not. I don't think either one of these things is going to be quite enough to get you solo completely.
Yep.
So it's just a matter of all these things making a lovely web of interconnecting wires in which if one breaks, you're screwed.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you also look at a lot of popular people, they have YouTubes tied to their Twitch too.
Yep.
So they're using any form of social media they can to get any form of advertising. They'll put out sponsorships. It's not also just Twitch. Once you've established yourself as like a brand, you start pumping out YouTube, you start pumping out anything you can.
Any other comments?
Yeah, you also have to remember, which I kind of want to ask Duke and Gavin, if they can answer it. I know it's really far down the line, and
sure,
only if you can answer it. But you also have to remember that Riot, or maybe even Tencent, because they own Riot, is paying the players a salary now. That was announced at the beginning of Season 3 that they are getting an actual salary for being a professional player by Riot. So is that something that Hi-Rez has talked about now that they're getting bigger, that maybe you want to do in the future, or is that just not in the company structure?
That's not something that Gavin and I could really talk about necessarily.
Okay.
But I will. Pon actually had a perfect segue into something I was going to say, but I had my audio set incorrectly. So I'm like talking, and everybody's just like, he's not there. I'm like, wow, these guys are jerks. No, I am. Okay. So Pon was talking about, someone's brand, right? It really comes down to, and don't take this as financial advice, but it ultimately comes down to, you've got someone like Lassus doing what he's doing, and he built a pretty significant a very significant following before he made the decision. But now it's who was it that said it? I guess maybe Cooper said it, that he's streaming constantly. He's all day, day. And it's not just Smite, he streams other games and stuff like that. He also has a little bit of YouTube content and stuff like that. But there's a Lassus brand. It's a matter of doing what you would do to make money in any other profession. And it's, being committed to it, doing it day in, day out until it produces the results that you want. And Gavin and I talk about this a lot of times because... I'll try to be as nice as I can about this, but
I know you're talking to. I know you're talking about.
Yeah, you have people who ask for a lot of things, and not just from us. They ask for a lot of things from the community and stuff like that, and it's just like, it's like, well, no one really knows who you are yet, and it's not like, well, we're only going to talk to you if people know who you are.
Stop talking about me. Come on now.
No, I'm not talking about you at all. You're actually the example I was going to bring up. There's Lassus, but then there's also Octane, who does everything on his own, and he has like a normal life that supports what he wants to do, with gaming and with his shows and everything like that. And so you have someone who's putting in not just time, but money, and he's networking with people, and he's creating a brand for himself. Just maybe not in the same way that Lassus did, because Lassus is a pro player, and he came from that dimension or that platform, I suppose. But you've got Octane, who's coming from let's make professional broadcasting professional for Smite, and it's very cool to see someone doing that. And Gavin and I have talked about that, as well as the the more negative conversation that I was talking about a while ago. But you've got people on the positive side of that conversation, like Octane, like Demon Machine, like these guys who've been around the community for a long time and who have cranked out content, because they're committed to creating a brand, whether that brand is OctanePro or that brand is the Smite update or that brand is some more overarching name or title. They're committed to creating a brand, and like I said, I'm not trying to be anyone's financial advisor, so don't take this as quit your job tomorrow advice. But you have to be committed to it, just like you would be to a job or a business of your own. Once you decide, hey, this is what I'm going to do. So,
any other comments there regarding the subject matter?
Yeah, I think another piggyback there is like I talked to Dry Bear, and he pretty much wakes up, goes to school, then spends hours rendering video, then he spends hours streaming, and then he goes streams, and then he goes straight to bed. His life is pretty much school, trying to make a living off doing what I like to do.
Yeah,
And school...
perfect example. Dry Bear is a huge example.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the last section with one or two last questions here before we go ahead and head out for today. I'll hand it over to Wristy to go over the tournament payouts.
Do you feel the competitive player organisation needs to be established early in the scene's infancy to protect the players, contracts, prize pools, and teams? So, Octane, could you elaborate on that one a little bit?
Sure, no problem.
Your questions.
Yeah, it's no problem. It's no problem. So, I come from StarCraft 2, the StarCraft 2 scene. I did a lot of casting over there and content providing over there before I came over to Smite. And something big, which is still a huge discussion in StarCraft 2, and I don't know how it applies directly to League of Legends, as I'm not associated and don't know as much about that, but do we need some type of organization to protect players when it comes down to prize pools, when it comes down to contracts, almost like an agency? And I know we're not there yet, but do you feel that we're moving in that direction, as we talked about before, with contracts locking players into the teams? And how about prize pools? I don't know anything about the prize pools, but maybe some of the competitive players and some of the other guys could talk about. Have you run into issues where prize pools have not been paid, or that you've had to struggle to get them?
I don't think you really need a organization. I think you need some place that a lot of players who are passionate about the game rally around, because the second a team has not been paid for 3 months and they go make a Reddit post, it explodes. Yeah. And bad press is generally enough to get anything done if someone wasn't paying out. And I've seen that a lot of times where someone's posted on the StarCraft where they were streaming and they didn't get money, and they explained the situation and it exploded, got a ton of attention. I don't think there necessarily needs to be a player organization that specifically protects them, because I think as long as the community is passionate enough, they kind of protect their own players.
Sure.
So I think that's pretty much what I have to say about that.
Anyone else? All right, moving on from there.
Next question.
So go for
kind of moving on a little bit from what PonPon was saying. In the other scenes, tournament payouts have been a big problem for the players, either by the teams, they're just never receiving their winnings, or it takes 6 months to a year to actually get it. So kind of what's been your experience, and what's it been like thus far? Let's go with PonPon, because he's probably seen some more of the payouts coming out.
Yeah.
There have been some cases where we've gotten tournament winnings very, very quickly, and then there have been some cases we haven't gotten them super quickly. But I mean, I think the big example is we didn't get PAX payment for PAX East for a few months. But I mean, in competitive scene in esports, you don't really get payout for you don't really expect you get it the next week. You it's generally well established that you get it a month or two later. So it wasn't anything urgent or bad or anything. It was just it was in that month to 2 month period. When you start getting to 6 months to a year, that's when it's a really big problem.
Sure. Throw it over to the Hi-Rez guys, just from the opposite side of it. So you guys are now providing the prize pools. What are some things that you guys deal with teams? I mean, we did talk about people getting pissed about not hearing about it, or not getting their funds right away on the spot. Can you guys give us some insight there?
I think there's some Reddit drama about that today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Was
I haven't
there?
seen that one yet.
Yeah.
Oh man, juicy drama.
every day.
I mean, yeah.
I was gonna say I even get stuff as an admin, like a new team won one of the tournaments, and they're like messaged me 10 minutes later, like, when am I gonna get paid? I'm like, I have no idea. Don't ask me. I just
Yeah,
turned it in.
I even get those messages. I get those as well. Like, I mean, I get messages for everything, but like, it's so confusing when they're like, "You guys aren't paying me," and I'm like, I've got $20 in my pocket. What can I do for you? Like,
Yeah, I think it could be maybe more well established. That, like it takes a while to get all the money together because and especially in bigger tournaments where it's a ton of sponsors throwing into this prize pool. Generally, they don't have the money right then. They have the sponsors that will pay out for the tournament. And so it takes a while to get all the sponsors to be like, okay, we need your payment, your payment, your payment. Then it's all collected and then it's all distributed. And there's a lot of paperwork that even goes with that, especially as it gets bigger and bigger. So expecting like immediate 10-minute, oh, here it is in your PayPal is unreasonable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally seen people complaining within minutes of the tournament ending,
oh yeah.
and it's just like,
Really?
You haven't even given us your PayPal email yet.
Well, I mean, even if we have it, it's just like
Yeah.
your tournament ended 6:00 p.m. our time on a Saturday. Yeah, we've got accounts payable, just chomping at the bit to pay you, right? Yeah, I mean, just think about it. I'm not trying to be glib because I'm sure there's plenty of other situations where it's not that way. Where maybe something got lost in communication or something like that, and so I'm not saying that we're innocent
All people are whiners.
of every, yeah. I'm not saying we're totally innocent and on all accounts there, but it's there are some people who can be a bit unreasonable, and that makes it worse if there ever is any sort of lag time, because then it's just like, oh yeah, they didn't pay us till like 3 hours later, and so it's just like
Well, I think
you
we're
got everyone
$10.
who's like, you're an idiot, and then you got everyone who's like, well, that's reasonable, and then you got everyone who's like, well, no, it's not. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, Bart messaged me like 2 months ago, being like, "Oh yeah, we also owe you like $50 for your whole team." And I was like, "What team?" And it was like Girth Gaming, which was 7 months ago. And I'm like, I didn't even know that we had $50.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's
Right. At least he had it on record.
Yeah, and so like the fact that he even came up to me like, "Oh yeah, we still owe you this," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." Like, I
think
didn't
part of the
keep track
issue
of
with
it.
that is, first of all, there's like, who is receiving the money on PayPal? Because Hi-Rez isn't going to go like, all right, what are the players of your team? What's your individual play? It's going to go to one person, in my experience.
Yeah.
Then if that person is the team, like, there's probably some managerial stuff. They might have to like, I don't know, maybe someone puts it in a wrong account and then it goes back and that can add time. And then it's like, okay, the team has the money, the players don't have the money. And then there's the fact that historically there have been instabilities in both the North American and the European teams. And just to use an example, I would not want to have to deal with who's getting paid from eLemon because I would want to die.
Well, I guess my question here, and maybe the Hi-Rez guys can answer it, is with payouts to some of the larger organizations that we see out there that are more established. Can you, I don't know if you can comment, but is that something that you guys financially have to send directly to the players, or do you actually have to go through the organization in order to do that and then it's distributed?
I mean, I don't know the full details. I know what I know what the admins sent. I'm copied on the emails that
Sure.
Demon Machine and Blake send in. So it looks like pretty much, for the most part, the larger organizations, there's a team manager, and that's the person who gets the money, and then they distribute it as contracts dictate or whatever, or however they distribute it. That's up to them at that point.
Okay. Well, I mean, that makes complete sense to me looking at it. That is the proper way to do it, because if you have people jumping ship from your team and stuff like that, that allows you a little bit more control. I mean, we talked about earlier how more and more teams we'd like to see have more management staff along with them in order to keep things moving. So that's very true. Any last comments about prize pools, payouts, anything like that?
Nope.
Alrighty. Well, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. Before we do, I just wanted to throw it out to all you guys. Is there any last things that we touched on that we kind of skipped past real quickly, you didn't get to comment on? Anything you wanted to give your 2 cents on, anything like that? Alrighty. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and just let people know where people can find you. And let's go ahead and start with Demon Machine. When you are not hanging out here, where can people find you to kind of check out your content?
Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all Demon Machine. I'm really easy to find on the internet. Just spell it wrong like I do, and I'm there.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks again for coming on the show there. Cooper, what about you, sir?
Is there link permissions in the chat?
You should be able to.
Okay, well, mine are pretty odd. It's if you want to find me on Twitter, it's Steven_L_Cooper, and then if you want to find me on website, which is where I post some content articles and everything like that, that's www.smitetube.com. It's a new website for the community, posting some 3v3 tournaments, which we have one this Wednesday. We run those every week, which Octane and Wristy themselves cast, and one of them are missing. I fill in for the casting role on that, but that's where you can find me. So I'll post those links in chat. And move on to the next person.
Excellent. And if for some reason it gets messed up, I'll just have one of the admins go ahead and post it. It looks like you're good, though. Jumping down to the bottom right-hand corner, Crete, whatever your name is that we've been talking about today. Sorry, I have to tease you on it. Go ahead and give us your social media information. Where can people check you out? Do you stream? If you do, go ahead and promote your stream as well.
Sure. You guys can find me at twitter.com/Kretata, that's spelled out TUHTUH, and twitch.tv/Kretata, just the same. And watch out for the Silver Snakes coming to a North American tournament near you.
Alrighty. Awesome, man. Throwing over to PonPon. Go for it.
You can find me on Twitch at PonPon Twitter, PonPon Smite. You can find me on SmitePro from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. And then also I'll give a shout out to my team, and I'll post that website too. And there are all those links. Hopefully they all work.
Yep, you're good. Excellent. Sounds good. And I'll throw it over to Duke. I know you do have your own social media where people can check you out. And maybe if people have questions, where can they email them or send them?
I'm mainly at Hi-Rez Duke on the Twitters, twitter.com/Hi-Rez Duke. And I mean, I'm okay at answering people when they tweet at me, at best.
No, I tried to get you once.
Yeah. Well, you sent me something earlier today, and I did not ignore it. I meant to tell you that before the show. That is something I was looking into. I just haven't had a chance to reply to you yet.
That's fine.
But yeah, I'm decent at getting back to people that way. Typically, the best thing to do if you have a technical problem is contact our support people, and you can do that directly through email, hirezsupport@hirezstudios.com. And that's a lot of the questions I get typically, because I used to be in support and I used to answer a lot of those questions, and so people tend to still ask me those questions. For development questions and feedback, it's best to hit up the social media, and typically the best place to do that is Reddit. Whether you like it or not, that's where a lot of people are looking. So reddit.com/r/smite, and that is the community-run Reddit. But our development team is looking over that very frequently, and they don't just look at the hot tab. They know how to navigate the Reddits to see your topic, even if it's not in the top 50. So they do pay attention, and I do pay attention and get the lesser seen things in front of them if it seems like it's something that's important to the community, even if people aren't necessarily clicking the upvote.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, sir. And Gavin, anything that Duke did not say?
Message me at Hi-Rez Gavin on Twitch. Like, nowhere else to get to me. Anything regarding official streams, contact me. I have your answers.
Excellent. Sounds
good. Does that
good.
mean for everybody that needs to be unbanned, they should all contact you immediately?
Oh, no, it's all right. They already do, so it's cool.
Literally just go to Smite Game or Smite Pro and just type in all caps Gavin, and he'll see it before Moobot deletes it, but he'll see it.
Actually, I am everywhere, so chances are I do.
They're legitimately, I just yell Gavin and he shows up.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, let's go ahead and finally throw it over to my co-host here, Wristy. Wristy, when you are not on the Smite Update, where can people check you out?
You can find me at YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch.tv. It's all Wristy UK, so it's quite easy to find. Same as Demon, but all the same names everywhere. So you can kind of find me there quite easy.
Excellent. Sounds good, guys. And finally, you can check me out. Just go to my website, OctaneProGaming.com. Everything's over there. Twitter, YouTube, VODs, schedule, giveaways, all that info. OctaneProGaming.com. Appreciate everyone coming to check out the show tonight. Appreciate the guests joining us with including their great input. Please join us next week on Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern for episode 22 of the Smite Update. See you guys next time.